all set. Okay. Hey guys, it's Krista Hovsepian from Wholesome Foods. I Love You. Is that okay? And today I am going live with this amazing woman, Vivica from the Nourished Caveman.
Hi.
I'm so happy that we connected.
Me
We
too.
seem to have so much in common, but
I know.
we're gonna talk nutrition right now because you are a resource. So do you want to talk a little bit about the work that you do and like sort of paleo and keto? And,
Sure.
yeah.
I always like to talk about my work.
Yeah.
So I am a nutritionist and I do a very specific kind of diet for my patients that I call Keto Paleo. And Keto Paleo, more officially, is also called a therapeutic ketogenic diet for healing. I came to be a nutritionist through, several adventures. I was just talking with Krista about being a photographer before. But for the last 6 years, I've been a nutritionist. I studied first, and then, I started out
You
with...
started as a food photographer, right? So it was
Yes,
linked into it.
Food
too.
is in the blood. I grew up in a restaurant in Italy, so it's not like it was never too far. It's my real passion is food.
Literally in your DNA.
Yes, that's why all I do is kind of based around food. But, food is our sustenance.
Yeah.
And, food and water. We can't do really without it. So.
And the quality is so important.
Yeah. And so I came, my origin where I started was studying Dr. Weston Price. I am sure a lot of you probably heard about him. And from there I found paleo. And I got really into the paleo diet and thought that paleo was the greatest thing, For those of you who are not familiar with paleo or Paleolithic diet, it's a way of eating that should mimic the way our hunter-gatherer ancestors ate.
Yeah.
I think in this day and age, is really not possible. It just really means eating no processed foods, no dairy, because that came afterwards, and with like raising animals.
Yeah.
No grains, and basically no processed sugars, no sodas, no McDonald's, all that stuff. So it's a kind of wholesome, very clean way of eating.
But I think it's important to sort of let people know who are new to it that it's kind of a template that has like many facets to it, and it's not like one sort of popular fad diet where it's like here's like a list of 10 rules to follow and you're all set. It's
absolutely.
It's a lot of sort of self-experimentation and figuring out like just because this food's paleo, does it actually work for my body or not? And maybe if this one isn't paleo, I'm okay with it, and how do I incorporate it? And
right. For me, that's exactly how Keto Paleo came about, because I was eating paleo for a couple of years and I thought I was doing the greatest thing in the world, but I kept gaining weight and I wasn't feeling so good. I had really high inflammation and pain everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
And then one day I found out I was pre-diabetic, and I was early 40s.
That's
and
huge.
I'm a nutritionist and doing everything, super good. And I was a little traumatized from that.
That's a hard
and I had
pill to swallow, not actual pill, but
metaphorical pill.
Yeah.
Not just that, I also had was hypothyroid and had Hashimoto's, beginning of Hashimoto's.
And that all
at once
hit you at once.
Yeah, so I was just like,
intense.
Yikes, what's going on?
Intense, but I feel like those are things that a lot of people in our modern culture are dealing with, that we're so busy and we're wearing our bodies down, we're not caring for ourselves, even if we're following a healthy diet. It's like this insane epidemic.
And what is a healthy diet? For me, I really came to the conclusion through this experience that a healthy diet is not always what you think is healthy.
Right.
Because a healthy diet really needs to be healthy for your body.
Yeah.
I see in my practice more and more with my patients that our kind of American Western lifestyle and diet do kind of lead you down a certain road. So it has certain effects on metabolism and, you know, physiology that are kind of common for a lot of people.
Sure.
But still, we're all different. You know, our physiologies are all a little different.
Yeah.
And very unique. So nothing, one size does not fit all.
Yeah.
So that's how I found the ketogenic diet.
Cool.
And I was able, within 3 months, to lose all the bad weight that I put on and get my blood sugars back to normal. So goodbye pre-diabetes.
Get that inflammation down.
Felt so much better, starting having so much energy, working out, and, you know, very healthy right now. I'm getting
She's got
over
a
bronchitis.
cough.
This year was pretty intense with viruses around here.
It was rough, yeah.
Yeah. Kind
and
of
like
got me.
damp and rainy. We're in Southern California, if anybody is tuning in and doesn't know that we're there.
And it was unusually rainy here.
Yeah.
And cold.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, so I started putting together like really what worked for my body, and that was, yes, eating paleo and organic and local and fresh.
Yeah.
But also eating low carb, because for my body at, you know, my early 40s, I was not able to tolerate carbohydrates anymore. And so paleo diet does not restrict the amount of carbs that you eat.
Yeah.
And I thought that, yes, like I can have, like, you know, sweets every day and, you know, fruit every day.
Yeah.
And
like you can be paleo and like pretty much live off of honey and sweet potatoes, and it's technically paleo. Yeah. And maybe that's a healthy diet for some people, right? Like there are some tribes.
Athletes.
Yeah.
Athletes.
People who are very active, who are like in a very clean environment.
Under 35.
Who are probably well rested as well. I think like that's a good point, because
no stress.
I think people bring that up a lot if they're talking about like the anthropological side of the paleo diet, and they're like, well, there were tribes like the Kitavans who like lived off of sweet potatoes, so that must be a viable option for a diet. And it's like, it is a viable option, but also like they were probably hiking like 15 kilometers a day and climbing trees, and I don't know.
I'm sure they had animal protein with it.
Yeah, exactly. Like
important.
I don't know if that's the best option if you're sitting at a desk all day inside. It's a lot of carbohydrate energy for very little energetic output.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, did you want to hear some details on how a ketogenic diet works?
That was going to be my next question. Like, walk us through the process, because I cycle in and out of ketosis, and I know what shifts take place and how that evolves, but I'm sure a lot of people are curious. And I think a lot of people start to panic when they, even if they're not going fully into ketosis, but they're reducing their carbs. There are a lot of biochemical shifts and adjustments that take place.
Keto flu.
Yeah, keto flu.
The famous keto flu.
Keto flu. And I've heard people just panic, and they're like, oh my God, this is a sign that my body needs carbohydrate.
Yeah, it's more carb withdrawal.
Yeah. So speak to that a little, please.
It could be a long conversation. We'll try to keep it short and sweet. But so we all have a different tolerance to carbohydrates, and I just want to point on that because it's really important to understand that the carbs, the good carbs, you know, like fruit and sweet potatoes, they're not bad per se. Yeah. Grains, that's another conversation. We'll leave it for later.
Totally.
But, you know, what happens when you eat a lifetime of a high refined carb, high sugar diet is that your metabolism changes. So you get constantly bombarded with sugar. What happens is your sugar spikes insulin. You know, when you eat sugar, it goes in your bloodstream, and then your insulin will come in to try to put that sugar away into the cells, or like we were talking about, be burned for energy. So it's great if you are a person who runs every day or runs from tigers or climbs trees and has to forage for food.
It's like throwing 50-pound kettlebells around all
day. All day. And you burn a lot of energy, so you can process those carbs out really fast. But again, when you're sitting on your desk all day and you're having candy bar, cookie, you know, a little bit of sweet here, syrup on your pancakes.
Yeah.
what happens, it just spikes your blood sugar, and then it doesn't go anywhere because you're not burning that energy. So insulin has to come in and has to put all that sugar somewhere. And so as sugar cannot be stored in the body in large quantities, we can only store it as glycogen, a little bit in the liver, a little bit in the muscles. And the rest, what do you do with it? So there is a mechanism that, changes the sugar into triglycerides, which is fat. And then as fat, they get stored.
Right.
And they all go to those fun places that we don't want to look at in the mirror.
Yeah.
And that's where the sugar goes.
It goes right there. And it really overloads the liver too, which is trying to process all of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And because the liver is where the conversion happens, so the glucose gets transformed to glycogen and then to triglycerides, and that happens in the liver.
Yeah, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the liver itself makes that small amount of glycogen that our brain kind of needs to stay sparky and alive when we're in ketosis. Like it can handle the amount the body needs on its own without us eating sweets and carbohydrates.
And I'll talk about it in a second as we talk about keto adaptation.
Cool.
But as far as ketosis, so what is ketosis for you guys that don't know? Ketosis is a process. It's an alternative metabolism. It's like having a hybrid car. You can put gas in it or you can run it on electric.
Right.
So ketosis uses ketones for energy or free fatty acids. So basically, in layman terms, it uses fat for energy. We can burn sugar. Some people have no idea that we can burn something other than sugar, or that our brain can survive on something that is not sugar. Everybody tells you that sugar is needed for the brain.
Yeah.
And to survive, that's your energy. Well, that's not correct. We have this ancient program. It's like a dormant metabolism that enables us to burn fat for energy. Imagine you're starving. So you're out there, hunter-gatherer in the middle of nowhere. There is no food for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. So by day 2, your sugar runs out. If you didn't have another source of energy that you can switch on rapidly, you'll drop dead immediately.
Totally.
I was like, your car tank is empty, the car stops.
You're done.
Done.
Yeah.
So there had to be a plan B in nature, because we can't, otherwise we wouldn't be here by now.
Especially through long stretches of winter. I mean, it's
exactly. And so that's kind of like bears in hibernation. They live under fat, you know. And so when you are fasting, especially for longer periods of time, so that means more than 72 hours, your body switches gears and it goes into ketosis. So it starts burning fat. And that happens, so I want to talk to you about keto adaptation, because ketosis is not keto adaptation. There are two different things.
Yes.
You can enter ketosis within 12 hours if you don't eat carbs or if you don't eat at all.
Right.
You'll go in really quick, but that does not mean you're keto adapted.
Right. And so some people will go on more of a moderate fat, higher protein diet and say I peed on a stick, I'm in ketosis. But that's not the keto adaptation that you're talking about.
Right. In fact, when you are keto adapted, you pee on that stick, the stick shows trace.
Yeah.
Because you're not excreting acetone anymore like you are when you are at the first stages.
Yeah.
So there are a series of physiological adaptations that happen when you're keto adapting. And they're all designed in order to, keto adaptation is actually designed for starvation. Right. So they're designed for you to survive the best when you're starving.
Yes.
Or in those long winter months where there is just a little tiny bit of dry, fatty meat to chew on in the dark of your cave.
Yes. Yeah.
So the first thing that needs to happen in your body is that your brain needs to switch from glucose to ketones.
Yeah.
And the brain cannot burn free fatty acids or any other kind of fat. It can only burn ketones. Why? Because ketones are metabolites. They're very similar to glucose in structure, and so they're readily absorbed. But the great thing about ketones is they don't spike insulin. So they're a very steady and, strong and readily available source of energy that can go on for a long time, also because we carry like 20, 30, 40,000 calories of energy with us in our fat stores. Yeah. Some people more.
Yeah.
Some people less.
Yes. Yeah. But it's a lot more than the number of calories that we can store from sugar and carbohydrates.
Yeah, which is about 500 to 1,000, not even. Yeah, about 500 with muscles and everything. Yeah.
And that's exactly why you're starting to see these like write-ups on, extreme athletes or that couple who like kayaked halfway around the world or whatever, just running on fat.
Yeah. Because also you don't get hungry, but that's a little side benefit.
Yeah.
So your brain needs to be able to switch from burning glucose to burning ketones, and that does not happen overnight. So it takes about 2-3 weeks, and it's a gradual process in which the brain starts, burning more and more ketones, specifically beta-hydroxybutyrate.
Yes.
And then
which we're now seeing in synthetic form as well. We'll touch on that after.
Yes, we can. And then other adaptations that are really important is that, your muscles that at the beginning they use ketones for energy, they start switching to free fatty acids, because what your body wants to do is really conserve all the ketones that your liver is making for your brain. Because your brain, if your brain goes dead, again, you're dead.
Kind of the most important part.
Yeah, so the body is not stupid, and nature is not even less stupid.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a good point for health in general. It's like, I think number one, when your brain starts going, when you're experiencing brain fog daily, when you can't think clearly, and then when your hormones start to get a little bit wonky, that's like, all of the alarm bells are going off at that point. You might think that it's a tiny thing, but your body is like screaming at you. It's like, we're in dire need of help here. Something has to change.
Definitely. Yeah. And a ketogenic diet is really good for the brain because of, the beta-hydroxybutyrate, which is a great brain food, and it's a steady form of energy, and it's like also like neuroprotective, has a lot of great benefits. It preserves cognitive function, so it really supports neurotransmitters, and it almost makes you smarter.
It does. The mental clarity is incredible. I've had major projects that I've been working on, and I've kind of been like struggling to get through them, and if I readapt, really get back into ketosis, it's like, I'm focused and I'm getting things done, and
it's good.
It's really good, and it feels good.
Especially when you have experienced that sugar roller coaster like crazy, and hangry.
Yeah, and you don't experience that like 3 p.m. slump of like, I need a nap or a snack. Like,
it's funny because people constantly like tell me and ask me, it's like, how do you have that much energy? How do you get that much stuff done all at once? Like, you're crazy. Like, it's not normal.
Yeah. It's like, have a fat bomb.
Or, like once you're keto adapted, the beauty is that, again, you're not hungry and you can use your own fat for fuel. So you don't even need a fat bomb because you can't eat. It's going to take some from your tummy or from the rear end. Or,
it's true. It's true,
So there is plenty of food there. So, about keto adaptation, it takes about 3 weeks, and I wanted to touch quickly about the keto flu, which a lot of people seem to experience, and
it freaks them out.
Because a lot of people just reduce the keto flu to being a lack of electrolytes, so like malabsorption of electrolytes, but I think there is a lot more to that. It's three things. So it is a lack of electrolytes, so it's very important to support like potassium, sodium, and calcium, not so much, mainly potassium and sodium when you are starting to keto adapt. Then there is the carb withdrawal, which is real. It's
real.
not imaginary. It's real.
It's real.
And then there is, what was the third thing? Just lost my train of thought.
The electrolytes, the carb withdrawal.
Detoxing.
Detoxing, yeah.
And the detoxing.
Because we store so many toxins in our fat cells. So.
Or it's just we're so toxic that the moment you start withdrawing the toxins, your body immediately kicks into detox mode. Your body wants to get the stuff out.
Yeah.
Does not want to hold on to it. It's like, get it out of me.
Yeah.
So as soon as you stop eating foods that are not serving you and they're not good for you, they don't, resonate with your body starts detoxing. And that all comes together in one nice little package called the keto flu.
Yes. And
it feels like flu symptoms. It feels like headaches, tired, sluggish, grumpy, rashes.
Yeah, you can sort of have weird outbreaks and stuff on your body. And I think it's possible too that you can start to release emotional blocks, trapped emotions in the body too, because it's just trying to push everything out. I actually just started cycling back in this week, and am simultaneously doing this Kundalini daily challenge.
Wow.
And I felt like it wasn't an injury, it wasn't a major pain, but I felt something release in like the middle of my T-spine. And when I woke up the next day with like this weird giant rash thing on my back. And I don't normally have things coming out of my skin because I detox constantly. And it was like, okay, that's something old that has been stored back there.
That's another great other conversation about the process of retracing, which is, I don't know, are you familiar with retracing?
A little bit, but
it's a long conversation, but it's just like, it's a part of the process of healing that when you're healing, like truly, your body's truly going into healing certain conditions, it will revisit the symptoms and sometimes even stronger. So you will feel like all your symptoms are coming back.
Yeah.
And you have either, breakdowns, outbreaks, things happening to you
it
as your body, your body is working through the same thing to heal it this time, and that happens when there are, conditions or accidents or things that have not been healed properly.
Yeah. Or just
body.
Just
emotion.
A byproduct of living in a culture that like encourages us to stuff everything down. Literally stuff food down to stuff it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. It's how a lot of people cope, right? Yeah. So I think everything that you have just kind of touched on really serves to highlight the importance of a well-rounded, holistic approach.
Yes.
And you were talking about your method and your approach being very unique in that way because you look at the diet and nutrition, you look at the supplements. What's special about how you approach your patients or your clients?
Well, I think that the kind of people you find out there as far as practitioners and also as far as, coaches or nutritionists, there are kind of two different groups. So one is the group that does muscle testing and supplements. They're more like, chiropractors, acupuncturists, sometimes naturopathic doctors, sometimes nutritionists, but not that much. So they deal more with the true healing of conditions like diabetes or hypothyroidism, and use a holistic approach to do that using like supplements. So there is that group, and then there is a group that does diets or systems of nutrition, of eating specifically, and they only do that, but they don't touch supplements. And if they do, third thing, both of groups, they use isolate supplements, which are chemically derived, made in the lab kind of supplements that you buy over the counter or, sometimes even by prescription, but they call them nutraceuticals for a reason, because they're from nature made pharmaceuticals. That's kind of what it means. You know, and if you think about it, what does your body recognize for food? Food.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So your body will not be able to take nutrients for something that is artificial and is not recognized as food. So in the short term, if you bring in, like, for example, an isolated vitamin, like ascorbic acid is not a whole vitamin, it's just a part of the vitamin. Your body is so desperate for it that it will use it, but it's going to have to pull all the cofactors from itself, to further depleting, in order to, like, be able to use that, because ascorbic acid alone is not usable. It will act as a drug, making the body do certain things. For example, if you take a whole bunch, it will give you diarrhea. But or
that's a whole other conversation too.
Nutritionist here. Anyways, nutraceuticals are things that act like drugs, even though they have a natural origin. They are forcing your body into certain processes.
Sure, which, like, in a pinch, if you're really deficient and you're just not, maybe you've got some digestive issues, or you're deficient in D3 and you live in the northern hemisphere and it's winter and that's your only option, it's great to have them, but it's not an ideal solution long term.
Right. I think they definitely have their place. What I use is whole foods. So I use whole food supplements and I use herbal remedies. They're foods. They're recognized by the body as a food, not as a toxin. And that's really important, because if your body's, you put whatever good, well-meaning random things into you, but your body might recognize them as toxins, and then you're doing more harm than good, because you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot there.
Well, and there are certain things that we just don't know, right? I think every time a new discovery about our biochemistry is made, or about minerals and nutrients, we're like, okay, we understand how this works now. Now we have the whole picture. And then, a few years later, they're like, oh, we didn't know that this hormone existed, or that this cofactor exists. And then you start to see, I keep going back to the D3 example, where like, for years we've been hearing we need to supplement with vitamin D, we need to supplement. People have been so afraid of going out in the sun. Again, that's another conversation. Or just don't have access to it, or, whatever the reason is, they're not absorbing it. So even physicians were like, you should be supplementing with D3. And then after a little while, it was like, oh, we're starting to see a lot of heart problems as a result of this. Maybe we should look into what's going on here. And a discovery was made where it was like, okay, when our bodies produce D3 from natural sources, from being out in the sun, it's sulfated, and it works in tandem with vitamin K2, which we would be getting from, like, grass-fed butter, or other great quality animal sources. Cod liver oil is a great one, and so it's like, okay, now we've made that link that we need D3 and K2 together, so people are supplementing with both of them. But my question is always like, what other factors are we missing there? What else have we not discovered?
Enzymes, trace minerals.
Exactly, and they exist naturally in those whole foods.
And by the way, like, there's still, like, science, our modern science, so glorified science, still doesn't understand most part of how phytochemicals work, meaning also vitamins, and how they work synergistically. Because sometimes, the old saying, like, it's larger than the sum of its parts. Well, that's exactly how, for example, plants work. You try to separate every little phytochemical, but then when you put it all together in a living food, it's a very different effect.
How do they interact? It's not dissimilar to how we've been looking at the human body for so long, where it's like, oh, you're having a kidney problem, let's just
take out the kidney.
Let's just address the kidney. Let's take it out. Let's only look at the kidney, instead of, like, what's going on in the whole body, what's happening with the whole plant, the whole food.
It's a microscopic view of things.
And it's not to, like, poo-poo science or say that, like, it's not, ever valid, or, like, it's good to have, these studies and everything as a base. But a lot of it is just currently incomplete.
I just feel like, scientists, they get really, like, this laser focus, and then sometimes they get lost and they completely lose sight of the big pictures.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't go to doctors. I try to take care of myself by myself.
Sure.
But I hear a lot of stories from my patients, and they scare me. And I have a lot of patients that come to me, and they're missing like vital organs, like thyroids and gallbladders, and, you know, female parts, and, you know, like
I've seen a lot of that too, and like young people. Young.
And then they're like, they come to me and they ask me like, can you help me? And I was like, yeah, I would love to help you, but I can't grow your thyroid back.
Yeah.
You know, and I can't grow your gallbladder back. So it's a little scary what doctors are doing, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I think, you know, sometimes there is a time and a place for it. Sometimes it is necessary. I think often people who then end up, you know, turning to someone like you, truly thought they were doing the best thing for themselves at that time, and
there was no options most of the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there often are, or at least things that can work in tandem, work synergistically, where it's like, you know, maybe you need to explore this therapy with your physician, but these things are going to support it, and maybe they'll, you know, give you better results or diminish whatever kind of mess could potentially go on there.
Yeah, if I have one message to share with your audience, like, it's really kind of my mission in life is to share with people that there are options. You're not delivered onto the medical system or the pharmaceutical system, and, you know, the people like Krista are here to kind of bring that message as well and spread it out wide, and you know, and that's why I'm really excited about her work.
Our whole community is really working on that and
getting more and more aware. But for those of you who are watching who might not be in, like, you know, Los Angeles, California, or, you know, Ojai, California,
where we're all self-healing all the time.
Yes, holistic community. And you live in a more like kind of mainstream area, there is still a lot of options. You just have to go look for them.
Yeah. Even bringing it back to the ketogenic diet as a therapeutic healing tool.
Yes.
I get so excited because it's like becoming more and more just highly revered and recognized in the medical community too.
Yes.
And it's being used in tandem with so many conventional treatments to really move things forward, and we're seeing it showing up in cancer clinics, and and I mean, it was really sort of, I don't want to say developed because it's a natural state of being for us, but in a medical sense developed for epileptics,
right?
And we're starting to see a lot of really compelling evidence for it helping and supporting Alzheimer's and the reversal of things like dementia and stuff like that. And there's a ton of research out there.
It's the brain.
You can Google it. It's all the brain and inflammation. It's all that giant, I don't even know what to say about it. It just, it makes sense in my brain. Go research it. So I wanted to ask your opinion on dairy. That's something that came up a little bit earlier.
Okay.
Some paleo and keto nutritionists believe that dairy is completely off limits, should be completely off limits. Some think that it's one of those personal things that you should test out, and if you tolerate it, it's okay to go for like a high quality organic or raw dairy. And especially in keto communities, there's a lot of arguing going on about, especially when it becomes a therapeutic thing.
Right.
Like, should it be a vegan ketogenic diet? Should it include animal proteins? And does that include dairy or not? And I mean, you could get into all kinds of really technical hormonal stuff, but what's your opinion on that?
Like we said before, not one size fits all.
Right.
I feel that in general, like if you really think about it, humans are not designed by nature to have dairy. because we have dairy as babies from our mothers. We're supposed to breastfeed for a few years, yes. Yeah. But then you don't see any other animal in nature that keeps eating milk past, being weaned. Yeah. So that already should just make you wonder, that dairy is a food and it has a lot of nutrients. It's a fact. Now, I think in my personal, especially clinical experience, I came to some conclusions that our dairy is not very good quality, first of all, and it doesn't come from very good places because it's not humane and it's not, the cows are treated very poorly, and that comes not just with, your conscience, but also what the product in the milk, it's full of hormones, stress hormones. Aside for the 20% allowed pus in your milk, that's why they pasteurize it, and ultra pasteurizes. It's not because of the bacteria, it's because of the pus in there. Right. Because, well, anyways.
No, but it's true, and it's so ironic that we're starting, especially in California, we're starting to see more raw milk products available. Yes. But that's always just been like a natural part of life in Europe, right? Like it's just normal to have raw cheese and raw milk available. That's how it would be. So I always think it's funny that it's like, oh my God, we can't sell raw milk. It's illegal because like it could be contaminated, but we can sell you this thing that has to go through this like crazy pasteurization process because there's so much junk in it that you can't consume. It's like...
So the first consideration, as we're saying, would be the quality of the dairy.
Yeah.
The second consideration for me, or maybe that's even the first, is that in the kind of patients that I deal with, I really see a lot of interference hormonally with women, especially women after 35, 40 years old. And when your hormones start getting a little delicate, and then, your hormonal balance is just kind of teetering there. Yeah. Adding dairy does not help. And that's not because of the hormones that are added for the cow's growth hormones and all that stuff. It's just the natural hormones present in the milk. Milk is designed to raise a baby calf to a big cow. Yeah. So it is a food energetically designed to fatten and raise an animal.
And encourage growth,
Yes. So for me, like a lot of my patients are already overweight. They don't need to grow more. They need to shrink.
Right.
And so, it's kind of counterintuitive to give such a food to somebody that needs to lose weight.
Right.
Plus, the hormones in it, they're not, conductive to your own hormonal balance.
Totally.
And then there is the whole food sensitivity part where most of the people that I know and most of my patients have got gut sensitivities because their gut is leaky.
It's so common.
Because of a number of things that happen with their diet for all their life. And
diet and stress and lifestyle factors and
altogether
a lot going into it.
Makes your intestines being permeable, so the proteins from the dairy get into your bloodstream and they become antibodies, and then you get sensitive. Even if it's not a true allergy, you know, it still keeps your inflammation high, it keeps your body always in a state of alert. Yeah. And it has kind of this domino effect in the body that again is not helping. Yeah. That some people can tolerate dairy, yes, absolutely.
Sure, and that's, I think sometimes when we delve into things like nutrigenomics and we're looking at the actual genome, you're more likely to see in like Dutch or French people a really, really good tolerance for dairy because
it's co-evolved with it.
Yeah, it's been a part of their diet and their ancestry for so long, and it was, really high quality stuff. Like I've always reacted poorly to dairy in North America, but if I go to the Netherlands or Italy or to visit family in Germany, I can tolerate small amounts for a few weeks. There is a threshold for me.
Yeah, there is that part too. That the dairy is not created equal everywhere.
Yeah.
Even processed and conventional dairy can be much different quality. And By the way, there are two kinds of cows. And
I was going to say, too.
Yeah, do you know about the two different kinds of milk
we
that
seem
they
to
produce?
see more problems with the A1 here, right?
I forgot.
I
I'm
think
terrible with numbers. Sorry,
I think it's the A1 cattle
and what's the other one? So many things to remember.
We'll have to look it up and link to it underneath.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at this in a while because I haven't been talking dairy in a while.
Yeah, me neither.
But it's basically that there came a point when in North America, for I'm guessing probably economical reasons, farmers just started using A1 cattle. And so it's just been years and years and years of being exposed to the exact same type of milk.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of European farmers would use heirloom breeds, a variety of breeds, and also, people would have access to goat's milk and sheep milk and
that's a really good point. In fact, like for a lot of people that are not dairy tolerant, actually they can tolerate goat and sheep.
Yeah, we're seeing like a huge influx of camel milk out here too.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
I've tasted camel milk.
I have too. Yeah, I have like a little bottle in my freezer right now. But it is supposedly just much better tolerated even by people who have sensitivities. And I think the reason that we're seeing it end up on shelves is because some researchers have been looking at it as a means of healing leaky gut, actually. I don't know how you feel about that, but
I have not dug into that one that deep.
I think it was sort of the idea that colostrum has healing properties because it is what allows us to develop and grow.
Colostrum.
So it would have to be camel colostrum because it is biochemically closest in nature to human breast milk. That's a whole other rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But camel milk, it's a thing. Who knew?
Could be the next trend. Actually, I know it already is because I was at my friend's restaurant last year. I think Mission Heirloom, strongly recommended in the Bay Area.
Oh, cool. And
it's a paleo restaurant, gluten-free paleo. It's amazing, amazing food. And when I went there, they had camel milk. So they are super foodie, trendy, Bay Area.
Yeah. I think everything starts out here and it'll find its way elsewhere eventually.
Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe not some places. Let's talk a little bit about the gluten-free, grain-free thing, because I think the more traction the quote-unquote movement, which isn't a movement at all, gains, the more backlash we're seeing. And, I personally encounter a lot of people who say things like, grain-free people, gluten-free, like, that's annoying. I hate that. And I'm like, hey, like, if it makes somebody feel better, like, what is there to be annoyed about? But from a clinical perspective, why would you recommend that people maybe consider avoiding grains?
Well, let's start with gluten. I think that one of the main problems with gluten is the abuse, first of all. Like, there has been, really the abuse done to the grain itself, to wheat especially. And to
there's
other,
that term like Frankenwheat, where it's not.
Pretty much. So it's been, first of all, hybridized before GMO came along, was already hybridized for thousands of years in order to get, bigger crops, bigger grains, more product, easier to grow, pest resistant, you name it. And then for all the same reasons, it started being genetically modified. And if that wasn't enough, dear Monsanto, that we like so much, decided to put is pesticide molecules inside the grain so they would be Roundup resistant.
Yeah.
So
which sounds like a great thing in theory. Like, hey, we're not going to have to deal with any bugs, but what's that doing to our insides?
Yeah, nobody considered that, yes, you put in Roundup in the grain so it will resist the Roundup, but the bugs will die. And if the bugs die, it means what? It's good for them? And if it's bad for the bugs, guess what? It's not good for you either, because you're alive.
Right.
So anything that kills an animal will most likely kill a human, maybe not in the tiny dose, but either there is, a large dose all at once, or there is a long-term usage.
Yeah, so, I mean, even if you're eating it in small amounts several times throughout the day, every day for 30, 40, 50, an entire lifespan, those chemicals are being stored in your fat cells.
It's called bioaccumulation.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're familiar with that one.
Yeah.
And that doesn't just happen in cows, it happens in humans as well. Anything that lives, longer. Any fish or, fish with mercury and us with toxins.
Yeah.
So,
and I think a lot of people know the fish example specifically, that it's you get a much cleaner fish if you're eating the smaller fish.
Yeah, because they didn't ingest.
But when you go to when you go to the tuna and the swordfish and stuff, they're holding on to a lot more toxins. Not only because they're absorbing more, but because they're eating the smaller fish. So it's the same thing for humans, right? Like if you're a carnivore and you're eating beef, and that cow has been eating Roundup bug-resistant grain, and you're eating that grain on top of it, it's all compounded. You're getting it from the cow, you're getting it from the grain that you're eating. It's a mess.
Yeah. And so to go back to gluten, what happens is you ingest these different kinds of gluten that have been tampered with, and eventually your body, actually not eventually, but from the very beginning, your body does not recognize it as a food. Again, we're back to your body sees that as a toxin.
Yeah. And
so it will create antigens to the antibodies. So those proteins that get into your body are antibodies, sorry. And then your body will create antigens to fight, the other way around. Sorry.
Yeah, it'll create the antibodies to fight it off. It basically, it thinks that your body is under attack.
Yeah.
In the same way that it does when you have a virus. Or...
The protein is the antigen.
Yes.
Which is like an intruder, and then the body creates the antibody.
Right.
To kind of eliminate the antigen.
Yeah, and one of my biggest concerns, and I think one of the biggest problems with that is when it's happening on a daily basis or every few hours, right? Like a lot of people are eating these foods every 2 or 3 or 4 hours a day. The body can eventually get to the point where it isn't able to differentiate between like a gluten protein and the natural protein present in your own cells, and then that's how you can sometimes end up with things like Hashimoto's. That's what autoimmunity is, right? It's at a very basic level.
Yes.
It's the body starts attacking itself instead of just
the process of autoimmunity. For what I have learned, it's a little bit different, but I think there is something to it. We say in nutrition that autoimmune is not a disease, is a stage of disease. Right. So that what happens is that every organ and gland in your body, when it's under a lot of stress, it starts not getting oxygen first of all, and then having like little amounts of necrosis, and so it will shed the proteins into the bloodstream, and they don't belong there because you don't want foreign DNA to be floating around in your bloodstream. Right. So your body actually has this growing eyeballs on your liver. Not good. So your body has this great cleanup system that, cleans up these foreign proteins. But when the body finds too many of those proteins, eventually it will go back to the source. And then the cleanup crew finds the culprit. So let's say your liver or your thyroid, your adrenals, that has been under attack from stress, and then shedding these cells into the bloodstream, and it will start attacking the cells. So this is not like some people think it's a malfunction of the immune system. I think it's really important to understand that the immune system is actually really doing its job.
Yeah, it's actually doing what it's supposed to do to
try
to protect you.
Yeah, to prevent from you turning into Frankenstein and being all weird and losing your identity of your organs and your glands.
Yeah.
But yes, and so where the process of healing starts there is you have to start healing the organ. And there are amazing supplements that can divert the autoimmune attack so you can heal the organ and feed the organ and all that. That's nutrition.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you have questions about that, just contact Vivica. See if she has time to take on new patients or clients, because that is a lot of great information.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And speaking of patients and clients, I think I have someone soon. So
I think you do. Yeah. So check her website out. It's thenourishedcaveman.com. I will put that underneath the video too. And you've got 2 books, 2 babies that you put out there,
and a third one in the making.
Yeah. The 2 are, it's the Healing Foods Method, right?
No, the books. My first book was a paleo book, and it was done in collaboration with other paleo authors.
Amazing.
So it's called the Ultimate Paleo Cookbook.
That sounds cool.
And then I did a little book of fat bombs, which is called the Big Book of Fat Bombs.
Yeah.
I don't even know my own titles.
It's okay.
And then this new one doesn't really have a title yet because we are still figuring out with the publisher, but it's almost ready. And it's basically, I call it my Keto Paleo Manifesto, because it has all my point of view, the way that I work, how I work with my patients, the kind of diet my patients follow, and a lot of yummy recipes for that way of eating and that lifestyle.
Can't wait to check that one out.
Thank you.
It's very cool. So definitely head over to her website. There are amazing resources and incredible recipes. We are going to be featuring a recipe in the series. Samara Stern and Jenny Raven and I, playing the roommates, we're going to make a souffle. Totally paleo keto compliant.
That should be a fun one. I picked a really hard one for them to make.
I saw it and I was so excited because it's a comedy.
It's so delicious.
It's a comedy, so I'm sure we'll get something cool out of it.
Yeah, I'll be watching the souffle in the oven. Is it coming up? Is it coming up?
Yeah, and I mean, I have to do some research first and make it a few times, right?
Yes,
that's only fair.
It's okay. It's keto. It's
not
bad for you.
It's not bad. It's healthy and it's going to be amazing. She's Italian. I guarantee it's going to be delicious. I really can't say that it won't be. So thank you guys for joining us, and check her out. Check out our series, Wholesome Foods I Love You. Again, it's www.wfily.com, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.